Welcome to the Eye Opener. I'm your host, Michael Lewis. Democrats suffered another setback in their push for amnesty for illegals, but they're relentless and will go with Plan C. Joint Chiefs Chairman General Mark Milley was grilled during congressional hearings for calling Chinese General Li. To put it another way, would any general call his enemy and give him a heads up the same way Milley did to Li? Canada is set to implement a facial recognition system for Canadian passport holders. But do Canadians realize the potential privacy and security risks? Okay, my friends, let's take a closer look together. Democrats tried again to include amnesty for illegal migrants in the reconciliation bill, but failed. Senate Parliamentarian Elizabeth MacDonough shut down the immigration reform proposal framed in the $3.5 trillion budget bill. The Democrats' first effort was trying to make 8 million illegals in the country eligible for amnesty. Then they tried to change the date that the migrants would be eligible for a pathway to citizenship. Now Democrats will try Plan C. They haven't given up, but they refuse to disclose more details about their third push. MacDonough hasn't been shy to kill priorities from either parties that she considers outside the scope of reconciliation. The reconciliation process requires provisions that must have an impact on the federal government's spending and revenues that's more than merely incidental. Democrats like Senator Dick Durbin argue their immigration reform, amnesty for illegals, does have a cost associated with it. And that's actually true. It's American taxpayers who will subsidize housing and living expenses for these immigrants. Any sort of amnesty is only going to encourage more illegals to come to the U.S. That's probably what Democrats want, but certainly not anyone else. With razor-thin majorities in both chambers, the budget process is a rare chance for Democrats to push their aggressive immigration agenda with absolutely no Republican support. How could they possibly pass this otherwise? Before jamming in more items of their wish list, Democrats should be deeply concerned now with whether or not all Democrat senators are in for the $3.5 trillion budget package. Today, we want to circle back on the two phone calls that Joint Chief Chairman General Mark Milley made to CCP General Jeoh Chung. According to Bob Woodward in Robert Costa's book, Peril, Milley repeatedly assured his CCP counterpart that the U.S. would not attack China. If there's ever going to be an attack, he would call China ahead of time. At the congressional hearings on both Tuesday and Wednesday, Milley admitted that he made those two calls. In fact, the general didn't deny anything said in the book. If there's clear communication in the chain of command that the U.S. wanted the CCP to know that there wasn't going to be an attack, then it's acceptable that Milley called China to dismiss the possibility. But Milley avoided answering this key question. Did he tell Li that he would tip off a future U.S. attack against China if there was one? This part of the call is really shocking that the chairman of the U.S. Joint Chief of Staff would tell an adversary, also the target of a military operation, ahead of time about a U.S. attack. We don't think the U.S. military would ever approve of this. We don't think an American would approve this, and Milley didn't deny it.
You really think the Chinese Communist Party head of the PLA would call and say, hey, General, FYI, we're going to get ready to invade Taiwan. I just thought I'd give you a heads up. You honestly think that?
I know I'd call him and ask him.
No, I'm
I would call
asking
him
the
and
other
ask him
question.
outright.
Do you think he'd give you a heads up
I think
on the
that,
invasion of Taiwan?
I think an invasion of Taiwan would be a fairly obvious thing to pick up on. And
No,
there'd
I
be a lot of
didn't, but that's not
communication
what I
going
asked.
back and
Let me
forth.
ask a related question.
Sure.
I think the answer to that is no. I think if the head of the PLA called you and said, hey, we're getting ready to invade Taiwan, and Xi Jinping found out about it, he'd be shot.
No, we don't think the CCP would give Taiwan a heads up about a planned attack. There's another aspect to this issue. What prompted Milley to make the phone calls? The book says Milley contacted Li after he reviewed intelligence that suggested Chinese officials believed the United States was planning an attack on China. Milley confirmed that this part of the story was also true. The general testified there was a body of intelligence suggesting the Chinese thought wrongly about the U.S. But we don't think so. We don't know of any country that was concerned with America planning an attack on China back in October and January. We didn't see any signs saying that the CCP was worried about that. Republican Representative Mike Turner deeply doubts this too. He asked Milley to hand over all intelligence reports that made the general believe that the CCP was worried about an imminent attack. Turner noted Milley had not shared the alleged intel with Congress by the time of the hearing. Milley's comments come amid calls for the resignation, including from former acting Secretary of Defense Christopher Miller. But President Biden said that he has full confidence in the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff. There's another reason that abandoning Bagram Air Base before the evacuation from Afghanistan was a strategic failure. California Representative Ken Calvert recently revealed Indian intelligence that said the ISIS-K suicide bomber who killed 13 U.S. service members was a prisoner released from Bagram after the Taliban seized control of the base. The Taliban released 7,000 prisoners housed in Bagram prison in August, including the suicide bomber. Being the top Republican in the House committee that funds U.S. intelligence and Army, Calvert said he has good reason to believe that the Indian intelligence is correct. In contrast, ahead of Central Command, General Kenneth McKenzie testified on Wednesday that the U.S. is still waiting to find out if the bomber was a former prisoner of Bagram, while Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin was basically silent. This again raises some serious questions on our intelligence throughout the entire Afghanistan withdrawal. From failing to foresee the fall of Kabul to the mistaken drone strike on ISIS-K that instead targeted innocent civilians. And now Indian intelligence is telling us the suicide bomber that killed 13 U.S. service members was a former prisoner released from Bagram, while Central Command is still waiting to find out more. The Taliban announced that the United States, along with other countries, need to abort its drone patrols in Afghan airspace or face the consequences. A Taliban spokesman wrote on Twitter, "We call on all countries, especially the United States, to act in the light of mutual commitments and commitments to Afghanistan in order to prevent any negative consequences." Because U.S. officials remain concerned that al-Qaeda and ISIS will return to Afghanistan, the Biden administration has said it will maintain over-the-horizon capabilities there. Defense Department Press Secretary John Kirby previously said, "We know that al-Qaeda is a presence, as well as ISIS in Afghanistan, and we've talked about that for quite some time. We do not believe it is exorbitantly high, but we don't have an exact figure for you." The Taliban maintained there is no evidence of ISIS or al-Qaeda in Afghanistan just days after ISIS took responsibility for bomb attacks in the eastern city of Jalalabad. Since taking back control of the government in Kabul last month, the Taliban has been pressured by the international community to renounce ties with al-Qaeda. Biden said in August, following the withdrawal of American troops, that the United States will continue to actively pursue terrorist groups in the country. And coming up, United Airlines is set to fire almost 600 employees for not getting vaccinated, and Canada plans to institute a facial recognition program over the next 2 years. But before we continue, I want to take a quick second to ask all my friends watching and the live chat family to please take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already, but most importantly, share this video. I'm depending on you, my friends, and the power of word of mouth to spread the truth. Now, today, I get to toast Daniel, who sent me some really awesome photos of his beautiful family and their mugs that matter. Now, when it comes to comment section, Daniel is one of my favorites. After every show, you can count on Daniel to leave an intelligent and well-crafted comment that's full of insight. And with that being said, let's grab our mugs and allow me to say, thank you, Daniel. Your support is greatly appreciated. Salute. United Airlines is set to fire almost 600 employees who failed to comply with the company's vaccine mandate. United was the first U.S. carrier to mandate vaccines for its 67,000 American employees. The airline has achieved a stunning vaccination rate of over 99%. Now, with less than 1% of the unvaccinated employees, the company said it's ready to begin the process of separation, while the unvaccinated can still save their jobs by getting the shot during the termination proceedings. While all of the nation's major airlines have encouraged employees to get vaccinated, United is one of the few to mandate it. Delta previously announced plans to impose a $200 monthly surcharge on unvaccinated employees' company healthcare costs starting in November. Alaska Airlines and American Airlines, along with Delta, have said unvaccinated employees will not get paid sick time if they get infected with COVID-19 and miss work. Canada will set up a facial recognition system within the next 2 years that will include faces of 25 million Canadian passport holders compiled into a database. In a notice titled Facial Recognition Solution, the Department of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada claims the facial recognition system would improve the accuracy of authenticating identities. However, no evidence seems to suggest identity fraud has ever been an issue in the country. A passport evaluation report from last year states that from 2014 to 2018, an average of only 57 identity fraud cases were confirmed per year. But Canadians don't have a say in this. The notice reportedly said Canadians who apply for passports are considered to have automatically agreed to having their photographs stored in a federal database. However, there's great controversy over governments establishing a biometric database of their citizens, including the practice of facial recognition. In a 2013 report titled Automated Facial Recognition in the Public and Private Sectors, the Privacy Commissioner of Canada acknowledged the fear that the technology could be abused, such as clamping down on political dissent. The best example is by the Chinese Communist Party. In a communist country where there are no privacy concerns, the CCP has mastered the art of openly and secretly spying on its citizens. It's a daunting task for the regime to track 1.4 billion people, but craving absolute control, the CCP did it anyways at a massive cost. A report from 2020 estimated the CCP had installed over 600 million facial recognition cameras throughout the country, about 1 camera for every 2 Chinese citizens. In Xinjiang, the home of Chinese Uyghurs, the CCP is able to use cameras to mark and track the movement of men with beards, a very common trait among Uyghur men. In many workplaces, Chinese people sign into work using their faces. With a centralized face recognition database, if that's the case, the CCP could swiftly determine where people work and their whereabouts with millions of all-seeing cameras throughout the society. Without an open discussion of the full implication of measures like facial recognition and other biometric information collection programs, including the vaccine passport, Canadians may be complying with something without realizing the potential consequences. And that's it for today, my friends. Check out the playlist right here for more eye-opening content. You can join me in the Eye Opener Telegram chat room and follow me on Newmaker, Gab, Parler, and Getter. Now don't forget, please sign up to the email list so that we can stay in touch. I'd like to thank you all, and I'll see you next time.